afternoon. Happy New Year. Welcome to Prospecting on Purpose Live. This is our first live episode of 2026, and I am thrilled to be joined by the one and only Jordana Cole. Jordana, welcome to Prospecting on Purpose.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm still dancing to your theme music. I enjoyed it.
You know, my younger brother made that music for me, and when I sent him the request for what I wanted, I said, I want it to be kind of vacation tropical vibes, but with a get to work oomph behind it.
He nailed it. He nailed it.
Thank you. And so now I own the rights to the music, and I think I paid him $150. So that's all good. We are so happy to have you on the show. For those who do not know Jordana, I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to get right into the content. So Jordana Cole is the founder of Ignited Consultancy and the co-founder of Shiftwell AI, where she helps individuals and teams feel better, do better, and see better results by sparkling behavioral change that doesn't just stick, but it really spreads. With more than a decade leading learning and development and talent programs across nonprofits and Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 50 companies, and a master's degree in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, Jordana is a globally recognized consultant, coach, facilitator, and a new TEDx speaker with over 350,000 views. She is featured on countless webinars, podcasts, and articles on the intersection of well-being, leadership, and organizational results. And she was a stand-up improv comedian for over 10 years. So I'm going to sprinkle that in as a core theme of our conversation. Jordana, welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. And hi, everybody in Webland.
And we got Liz. I see Trenton. Hi, guys. Well, and I'm just going to get right into it, because one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is this area where I see teams struggle is 100% in the face of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And if I were to separate like a rock star seller between a just run-of-the-mill JV, junior university seller, it's the ability to sit and be present and be confident leading your client without knowing what's going to take you off the rails. Like, that is the ultimate form of confidence. So that's really why your content really stuck out to me.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And you know what? We are all in different worlds. We're all in different industries. We are all in different roles. We all have different experiences. But the one thing we all share in common is we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. If you do, let us know. We'll crystal ball it. There's a lot of really great stuff there. But yeah, we are all facing uncertainty, and that's true of the overall human experience. But the time that we're in, it feels more pronounced than ever before. And those who are able to move with it rather than against it are those that are going to be successful. And I love the way you call it. Like, that's going to separate the, professional, the cream of the crop, from the rest.
I love it. And you had a line that really hooked you right in the beginning of this concept around improvisation. I think when people say that, they think improv sketch shows. And you're so right. We're all just walking around doing things for the first time ever all day long. But you had a comment that said improv isn't something that you learn, it's something you remember. So why don't we start there? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and you just kind of brought it up. So it's funny when people find out I do improv, they go to me, tell me a joke, do something funny. And that's not what improv actually is. Improv, if anybody's ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, it's completely making things up on the spot based on the inputs that you get and the suggestions that you get from the audience, and based on what your scene partners throw at you. It is not rehearsed. It is not scripted. And then the next thing people tell me is, I don't know how you do that. I just can't think that quickly. And my retort back is, oh, really? Who's telling you what to say right now? Because literally that is core to who we are as human beings. We are all natural improvisers. None of us is walking around with a script. None of us is walking around with an instruction manual. Do we have experiences? Do we have knowledge? Do we have skills, strengths, and talents that we call upon to use in those situations? Absolutely. But every single one of us is literally making it up as we go, and we're all doing the best we can. And when you realize that, you remember that, okay, this isn't something that suddenly I need to learn a new skill set, which can be really scary and tough to do when you're feeling overloaded and overwhelmed. It's about tapping into something you already know and learning how to use that more effectively. So seriously, if you take nothing else from this half hour, just remember that you are an improviser. It's been who you've been since the day you're born. It'll be who you are every day here on out. You just need to own it and recenter back into it.
I love that. And I think, a lot of the examples we're going to talk about are sales examples, because that's a big part of the work that I do. But like your point on the human experience is improvisation. I'm struggling with that word a little bit. Improvisation.
Yeah.
I'm going to get better before the end of our meeting here. But one thing that I think is really powerful to remember is that everyone has to influence other people.
Yes.
And like do that dynamic dance with somebody else in any role you have. Obviously, as a role as a partner or a parent, etc. But especially in the workplace, even if you're not a salesperson listening to this, you still have to influence your boss. You have to influence executive leadership. So that's why I'm really excited about the conversation. So let's get into some of the tools that Jordana shared in her TEDx talk. And we'll link the talk in the show notes. We'll link it in the LinkedIn post, of course. But Jordana, you have 3 boosts to recharge your inner improviser.
Yes,
so I'd love
do.
to go through them with you.
Yeah. So the first one I phrase as play to the scene you're in, not the one you want to be in. So what in the world do I mean by that? What I mean is we often have ideas, plans, scripts, whatever it might be, of this is how I'm going to do X. And something happens that completely throws a wrench in that plan. And we have to figure out how to handle that. And a lot of times we can try and force our plan through anyway, or just say the same thing over and over again louder, hoping that it'll land the next time. And often when we do that, it just creates friction because we're fighting against the environment, the situation, the reality that we're in, instead of working with it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have an ideal desired state, but the best way to get there is to actually recognize what's going on in the situation around you and adapt to that, maybe letting go of preconceived notions, paying attention, and this requires being present and out of your head to what's there and building on it instead of fighting against it. And, I think about this in sales all the time. Objections happen, right? You're on a conversation with somebody and they throw out an objection that you weren't prepared for. And suddenly the script that you had in mind no longer works. You can try and bring back to your plan, but that person isn't going to be heard. And it's probably going to stall your momentum and your success in being able to sell. Instead of really listening to, okay, if that person is changing track, what do they really care about? And if I don't have something that I can respond to right away, and sometimes that's not even the best plan because people want to be heard. People want to be valued. And when you're kind of going at them with the same thing, they don't feel that way. So take a step back. Tell me more about what you mean by that. Go into their reality and then figure out how you can work with that. So that's what I mean by that boost. And I'm curious, Sarah, like when you heard that and you think about your perspective in sales and sales leadership, what came up for you?
Well, first, it was all the trauma times where I've called an architect or a builder and then gotten screamed at because I wasn't expecting to be, yelled at on the phone. And so I think one of the first things that came to mind was around when uncomfortable conversations happen with our clients, because that happens a lot. And I learned from a great mentor early on that the way you handle something when things go wrong gives you the opportunity to show what you're like to work with. So kind of reframing the fear behind getting yelled at by a client, because it happens. And your objection handling example was perfect. And it's funny, just a couple months ago, I was talking to the head of talent development for a large company, and we were talking about the structures of my sales training and the framework. And she told me she's been watching some senior leaders. So it happens to everyone. Everyone is an equal offender of this, but you have this script that you're going through and a client has a question and it's, I'll get to that in 4 slides. It's like, no, just answer the question. Exactly your point of being present, listening, and making the other person feel seen, because a lot of times you can totally tell when someone's just on their own agenda and you lose any trust because they're like, oh, this person's not even listening to me. What am I doing? So I love the play to the scene you're in and accept the reality, because that's going to help you solve whatever challenge is right there so you can get back on course.
Yeah. And, I love what you said. Like, do you want to be yelled at? No.
Mm-hmm.
But that's outside of your scope of control in that moment. That happened. There's nothing you can do to change that happened. So recognizing like, okay, I'm in a situation where somebody is upset with me. Accept that. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Accept it. And what do I do next?
Right.
And if we kind of keep going the route we were going, we're actually just going to cause more upset responses, because what you did to start that upset them. So if you continue down that path, and then to your point, like when you're going by that script, you're missing information. You're missing data that's relevant and can help you be more effective, because ultimately that conversation isn't you talking at somebody, it's talking with somebody. And people do not like it when you try and force them to your agenda versus keeping them at the center. So that's what, playing to the scene you're in, not the one you want to be in, is about recognizing where they're at, recognizing where you're at, and building on that together.
And you're so right, because if you take the time to pause and not get emotional, which can be hard, and not say, I emailed you a year ago, this would happen, and you ignored me, that's not going to help anyone. So just stick to the facts. But I like your point on being in the reality together and being in a conversation with someone. They're going to give you the clues you need to go solve their problem. Yeah. So if you can understand where the pain's coming from, where the objection's coming from, why you're being yelled at, then you can go back to your customer service team and say, hey, I know that this is out of the norm, but you need to understand this hotel failed their fire safety check because we didn't ship something, like having that conversation and making sure you're aligned with the client, that you're here to help. And I think that tool is just making it, I think it dissolves some of that fear.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I might skip around to part of another boost. So this is a bit later in the talk, but the piece I'm going to bring out, which I think is important with what you just called out, is this idea of co-creation. So people often think that improv is stand-up comedy, the person on the stage with the microphone telling jokes for 20 minutes. And it's not. That's scripted. That is a sole person. Improv is a team sport. You're very, very rarely creating something by yourself on a stage. Now, I've been in some shows where I have been, but even in those circumstances, I'm still not creating it alone, because I'm getting a suggestion from the audience, because I'm getting real-time feedback to what the audience is responding to. Because sometimes I'm even bringing audience members on stage with me to create things with me. So you're never, ever in improv doing something alone. If I'm improvising alone, I'm singing in the shower. And my dog is there. So I'm not in the shower. That would be weird. But she's nearby. So that's really important, because so much in work or life, we wind up getting in this kind of me versus you thing. I know enough about sales methodologies to be dangerous. It's part of my own concerns with the whole challenger model versus the solutions model, because that creates adversary relationships, me versus you. And what improv teaches you is we're in this together. In fact, there's a ritual that improvisers do before they hit on the stage, particularly if you're about to jump out there with somebody you have never worked with before, where you tap them on the back and go, I've got your back. So you feel like you're a part of a team, because you are. And it's, how are we working together towards the same goal? Instead of you versus me, how is it we towards that problem that you're solving for? And as somebody who's been on the vendor side, and as somebody who's been on the seller side, I can tell you that when salespeople are coming to me thinking about how can we work through this together, and maybe my solution isn't the right solution, but maybe I have a resource I can give you, or maybe I can connect you to somebody. Those are the people I come back to and find later, even if I'm not working in that organization anymore, because it was a sense of we. And that idea of co-creation is also with the resources around us. I know that a lot of times we kind of feel insular in our own work, but we're not on islands alone. There are people that we can learn best practices from. There are different people who are really great at the things that we struggle with, that we can ask for their advice, or we can even delegate so that we're working together to be successful. But that requires taking the step back and remembering that you are going to be more effective when you work in partnership to co-create versus doing something alone.
And that is so important for B2B sales, because a lot of times in a B2B sales environment, you have a mutual client of the end consumer. And so I feel like I love this idea of the team sport and co-creation, because you're aligned with your buyer, because the mutual end client, I'll use a hotel example. If I'm selling a product into a hotel, the guest is their client. The guest is also my client in many ways. So if you can make sure that your conversations, your messaging is around that concept of co-creation, how can we together create the best guest experience? You're going to stand out from the other run-of-the-mill sales guys.
Yeah. And it takes the pressure off of you to have the answer.
Totally.
And because when you're co-creating, you're building on it together organically. And that's also when the person gets on board themselves.
Yeah.
So, that can be so powerful. Ooh, I see.
Mark just threw up a comment. Get a question you can't answer. Don't do it like the past boss told me. Make up an answer and then circle back. It's going to ruin your credibility. And you're right. Nobody knows what they're doing half the time. So it's not weird if you don't know something. And I think we need to give our scene partners, our clients, our prospects a little more credit that they're going to understand if we don't know something. Great input, Mark. So Jordana, let's go to your second boost. What's next on the agenda?
Okay. So the next one is make your memory short and your learning lasting. So what do I mean by that? It is so easy for us to nitpick. I like to joke that in a world of social media, we see other people's highlight reels, and all we do is play our blooper reels over and over and over again. And look, I'm going to go psychology nerd on you for a second. There's an evolutionary basis for this. We have a negativity bias in our brains because it's what has set us up for survival. But, what we needed to survive in the times of caves and creating fire is not the same thing that we need to survive in the day-to-day, but that instinct is still there. So we tend to be hypercritical to ourselves in a way that we would never be to anybody else, and in a way that nobody else is to us. And, whether it's you watching yourself on video or listening to a call or going, oh, I was going to say this and I shoulda and I coulda and I woulda, nobody knows what's in your brain as much as you do. And what happens in uncertainty, when you catch yourself in those moments in the moment, improvisation is all about this space. I call it like the space between, the we space. When you're up here, you're not there anymore. You're no longer present. You're shut down. So if you're going, oh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do this? You're not listening. You're missing something that might actually be really valuable to build on together. You're distracted, and the person on the other end can feel that and can know that. And they're going to take that to believe that that's because you don't care, or that's because of them, because we make up our own stories, and not because you're beating yourself up. So in the moment, let it go. It's not important. Refocus on what is important, which is co-creating with the people with you and building on what's there. Now, I say make your learning lasting because it's not about completely ignoring. It is about learning from those moments. And when we take a little bit of a break from those moments, we can come back to it with more of a curious and a reflective and a thoughtful stance rather than an emotional one. We're not kind of feeling it so raw. And you can actually treat it like, imagine you were, a different person watching this. What would you notice? What would you say to yourself? And what can I take away from this that I can learn from? Instead of nitpicking, what's the key lesson on something I can do differently, similar, better next time? And how do I integrate that? And it's also not just about the stuff we do poorly. And this is where we have to train our brain, because we focus so much on the mistakes. What did I do well? What did I try that maybe it didn't work out, but I could be proud of for putting the effort in? what's a small area of progress? Maybe I didn't get the outcome I wanted, but I was less comfortable talking about this in my last call than I am in this one. And I can feel the momentum in that. What did I do to get there? And how can I build on that moving forward? That's what learning looks like. It's not critiquing, it's applying.
Wow. I mean, I had like 4 different huge takeaways from what you just rolled out. I want to hit on 2.
Yeah.
One is this concept of like being in your own head in the me space versus the we space. I in my workshops, we talk about the value of using people's names and remembering names. And the reason, in my opinion, the reason why people are bad at remembering names is because they're crafting their own introduction in advance, or they're trying to listen to your introduction thinking, does this person add any value to me? And then we don't have space to retain the other person's name. And it's so rude. You know, I get it that people, so one of the things we talk about is removing the language, I'm horrible with names, because it's showing you don't care about their identity, their culture, their humanity. So it's really important. And I appreciate that you're giving us some like psychological language behind it too. The other thing that was a big aha moment for me on number 2, make your memory short and your learning lasting. I also went to, things we did wrong or things we could have done better. And we would try to reframe mistakes as learning opportunities or teachable moments. But I love that you're giving us permission to look at what went right and really learn from what's working too. So that's a great reminder.
Yeah. In fact, research suggests that's the best way to be effective. And, if you think about it, for anybody who has a kid, or has a kid they love in their lives, what happens when you tell a kid, don't hit your sister? First off, you've put that in their head already. And then second off, you've told them what not to do, but that's not the same thing as what to do. The absence of what not to do doesn't create the right behavior. So, okay, you said, don't kick my sister, so I'm just going to hit her. Or don't hit my sister, I'm just going to kick her. Because you didn't say, don't kick my sister. And the way that we get more of the right behaviors is highlighting the right behaviors when we see them. Buddy, great job in sitting with your sister and reading a book with her. Great job in cleaning your room. Like, how do we keep that going? And the same is true with adults. What are the practices that are working? Those are the things that get us the results, not the removal of the things that are hurting the results.
That is brilliant. In our earlier example that I shared about getting yelled at by clients, it took me a while to get comfortable with that feeling. And I did have a mentor, I reference it saying, what are the facts? Just state the facts. So sometimes the fact might be, I emailed you a year ago that this was going to happen. You're not going to say that in the moment, but if you just stick with the facts, and that is just one example of something learned behavior from me on handling conflict. And I never thought to give myself like an atta-girl for that. Like, way to go, Sara. That was the right behavior moving forward. So I love that you're giving us these tools and language. Can we go to the third boost?
Yeah. Yeah. And before we do that, I just want to hit on even what you just brought up about remembering names. That's a right behavior. And you're not building habits takes time and it's hard. So you're not going to remember a name each time. But if the next time you go to an event, you remember one name, our tendency is to go, well, look at all these other names I forgot. No, celebrate that you remembered that one name and you used it, because that's progress and that's how we build momentum. So there's opportunities for this all the time.
Love it.
So this is actually a nice tie to the third boost. So the third boost has 2 layers, and it's co-create with strength instead of fixing weakness alone. So we already hit on the co-creation piece. I'm going to hit on the strength piece. Again, psychology nerd. The way our organizations are structured, the way our performance reviews are structured, the way our report cards are structured is we are conditioned to fix our weaknesses. But the research shows that we are going to be much more effective when we focus on our strengths, because we have more energy, because it's where our talents innately align. So we're more authentic to who we are. And because it actually leads to better satisfaction and well-being. And I throw in some stats from Gallup in my talk. And yeah, thank you, Liz, for sharing. Right? You shut down when you have a leader who focuses solely on what didn't go well, when it's much of the time, rather than the 99% of the things that are great. And that's true with how you see yourself. Instead of focusing so much on what you don't do well and who you aren't, focus on what you do well. And when I started improvising, I talk about this in my talk, I had this vision of who a great improviser was, how they behaved, how they acted, and that wasn't my natural talent. And you come into a new role and you get hired and you've never done it before and you see somebody who's the model and you try and be like them, but then you struggle because that's not you. So years ago, I managed a client success team, and my team was moving into more of an account management role where they were becoming more sales oriented. In the client success role, they were more consultative in increasing adoption and a little bit of retention, and then a little bit of upselling. One of my team members came to me and said, I'm really scared about moving into this sales role because I now have a target. That's my goals that I'm responsible for, which is $1 to bring in, where I'm used to just being like client satisfaction and retention rates. And I'm not super competitive. And like, that's not what drives me. And I said to him, if you try and do that, you're going to fail because that's not who you are. Here's who you are. You are an incredible relationship builder. You deeply get to know your clients. You seek to understand their pain points. You do research on what's going on in their organization and you reach out to them proactively. You reach out to show that you care. You remember things about their family, their lives, etc. I said, if you lean on that, the numbers will come because that is who you naturally are. But if you focus on the outcomes and the numbers at all costs, you are going to struggle. A year later, he won the Salesperson of the Year award.
Amazing, because he leaned on his strengths and co-created with his. I mean, we love relationship salesmanship here. So I love that you shared that example.
Yeah, and so I'd encourage you to think about what are the strengths that you have, and if you're not sure, where do you feel energized? What stage of your work and what stage of the process? What do you like to do more of? Where do you focus your time and energy? If you could spend more time doing X, what would it be? What do you care most about as a person? And what's, feedback you get from others about things you do really well or they admire about you that you might not see in yourself?
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well, let's recap the top 3 boosts, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Would you start at
the Okay, so play to the scene you're in, not the one you want to be in. Make your memory short and your learning lasting. Co-create with strength instead of fixing weakness alone.
Amazing. And do you have a bonus boost for us by chance?
Oh, I do. So the last one I have is give yourself permission to play. Uncertainty comes with a lot of emotions. And oftentimes those emotions can be negative. They can be fear-based. They can be anxiety, anger, frustration. And the best way to get out of that is to insert a moment of joy. And it's free. It doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing that I'm joining this team or I'm going to this event. We can create moments of joy through play in all aspects of our life. And again, psychology nerd, when we are in threat response, we get that tunnel vision. We get super protective. We struggle to regulate our own emotions, and we can't see options or opportunities. Our view narrows. When we insert joy, play, pride, humor, laughter, we suddenly broaden. We're more open, and that's how you can be creative and innovative, and you can hear different things when you're working with different people. Play in the way that's authentic to you. For some people, it might be telling jokes. For others, it might be coming up with a competition or a game. For others, it might be exploring something new, going outside with your dog, getting goofy with your kids, creatively writing. There's doing a puzzle, building something. There's a million different ways that we can play. And if you bring more moments of that into your day, you're going to feel energized, lighter, and more creative, regardless of what's happening around you, because we can't control that, but we can control this.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Permission to play and permission to find joyful moments. And I would say, Jordana, our conversation today is definitely one of my joyful moments of my Friday and my week. So I'm so happy you were able to join us. Where can people follow along if they want to learn more from you or connect with you?
Yeah, so please, first off, check out my TEDx talk, What to Do When You Don't Know What's Next. It's there, comment, share. I'd like to help as many people as possible. I'm super active on LinkedIn, so find me here, connect with me, send me a message. Let me know what resonated with you. I regularly post things about work, about leadership, about just thinking about different things in the world. And those are the two best places to get in touch with me. And yeah, looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Well, I think Jordana is brilliant, and I appreciate that you can combine brilliance with play and creativity. And I think we all need more of that in our lives. So thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast. I will link everything that you shared in our show notes as well for when this is repurposed for the pod. And for those who join live, thank you so much for the engagement and for joining live. This was such a fun way to spend the Friday, Jordana.
Thank you, Sarah, and be well, everyone. Got your back.
I got your back. All right. I love it. Take care and talk soon.